Yo, 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 yo. Welcome to another day, another episode of Once and For All podcast. Today is Thursday, May 4th. It is 12:21. And again, I'm just so happy to be talking to you guys. So happy to be making another episode, just being here with you guys. So, let's get into it. First of all, we do events of the day. Again, today is Thursday, May 4th. As far as today, there isn't anything really, big coming up, big going on. We got prom coming up. Understanding different cultures is a very big social skill to have. It's a very important social skill to have. Being able to understand the cultures of those around you, of those in different states, cities, countries, continents is important because the more you know about other cultures, the more accurate you can be with the information you put out into the world, and the more socially acceptable you can be, when you put stuff out into the world. I know me personally, when it comes to culture, again, I'm still learning mine, and day by day I may pick up pieces from other cultures and understand a little bit of that, but understanding cultures isn't like it isn't a final goal. There isn't like one set finish line that we all try to get to. I think the amazing thing about learning and learning cultures, learning about cultural diversity is that every day there will be, something to learn, something to build on, something to improve upon. Every day there is more to learn, there's more to figure out, and I guess that's just one of the many, many gifts of learning is that there's always something more to learn. So today, I just want to talk about, what are the four types of cultural diversity? Okay, so when it comes to cultural diversity, there are four kind of subcategories into it. There's eternal diversity, and eternal diversity refers to any traits or characteristic that a person is born with. So, that's just one of the many different types of, diversity. Again, I learn new things every day because I just learned today that there was more than one type of diversity. But yes, the first kind is eternal diversity. The second kind is external diversity, which includes any attribute, experience, or circumstance that helps to define a person's identity, but is not something that they were born with. So that can include your economic status, that can include your marital status, your appearance, the location where you live. All of those things can be picked up and become a part of your personal culture. So, like, if you're from, say, Milwaukee, and you move to San Antonio, you pick up the culture of San Antonio, but that doesn't mean you lose the culture of Milwaukee. So external diversity is just understanding that it's any external attribute about a person. The third kind of diversity is organizational diversity. Excuse the bell in the background, but organizational diversity, which is differences in job function, work experience, seniority, department, or management level are often referred to as organizational diversity. So, organizational diversity basically is just different leveling in maybe like a company or a group or an organization. So just different tiers to anything, different levels of organizational diversity. An example of organizational diversity maybe at school is you have maybe a tutor or a mentor, and then there are teachers, and then there are administrators, and there are presidents, and there are board leaders. That could be like an example of organizational diversity. Or if at work, you may have your team lead, and you got your assistant manager, you got your manager, you got your general manager, you got the store owner. So it's just, different levels to any group or business or organization. Those are different types of organizational diversity. And then the last the last category is worldview diversity. And this just is a broad range of beliefs, political affiliations, culture, and travel experience. Um, so that just goes about like maybe personal experiences that you go and experiences, or personal beliefs that you establish as a person. We all have our own beliefs, and everyone is diverse in their beliefs or things they believe. So worldview diversity may be one of the most diverse one of the diverse subtypes of diversity, just because of everything it encompasses as a whole. Understanding all four of these types of diversity is very important, because understanding that first of all, understanding how to display these types of diversity is good, because when you look at cultural diversity and you look at the different subtopics, just understanding each of these so you can socially represent them in a appropriate way is very good. While we're on the topic of different types of diversity, there is, age diversity exists too, and that isn't one of like the four subtopics I was talking about. It definitely fits into one of those, but I mean, age diversity is one that's a given. It's more of a they kind of immediately come to mind, but they're yeah. Now looping back to cultural diversity as a whole. I feel like cultural diversity is great. It's amazing to be in a country where there's so much cultural diversity, and being in places where there's a lot of cultural diversity, because it allows you to pick up on different pieces of different cultures and educate yourself if you take those opportunities to learn about those cultures. The more diversity there is in any place, the better, because diversity allows for the mixing of different cultures, and that allows for the maybe mental and social training of how to, you know, appreciate and not appropriate different cultures. And that's one thing that is going to be like a big rule, or for me and for people I bring on this podcast, is that we appreciate and not appropriate the cultures that we talk about. I feel like that's a line that a lot of people tend to cross these days when it comes to talking about culture or understanding different cultures. Is the line between appreciation and appropriation. Appreciation is if you see a culture and you're like, wow, that's really amazing, and maybe if you actually talk more about it, they bring you in and they're like, well, this is this, this is this, and they show you how to dress up or cook the food, that's appreciation. And if you choose, replicate that and take that out and do it, just giving credit to them and, making sure, you acknowledge that that is their culture, not your culture. It's just something you were, blessed to pick up on. And cultural appropriation, now that's, cultural appropriation is a big thing that goes on these days. And it's a problem for a lot of people. A lot of people take offense to it, and a lot of people do it. And sometimes it isn't always on purpose. The correct definition for cultural appropriation is the unacknowledged or inappropriate adoption of the customs, practices, ideas, etc. of one people or society by members of another, and typically more dominant people or society. So one very, very common example of cultural appropriation is African American culture being culturally appropriated by some Caucasian people, and this is a very thin line and hard line to differentiate sometimes, because some people truly don't understand that they are appropriating and not appreciating. Yeah, so that's just one thing that while we're doing on this topic, I'll try to be mindful of, and I'll try to make sure that I'm always appreciating and not appropriating. Yeah, so going back to, I know I keep getting these little sidebars, but, sidebars are important because they allow for a more variety gathering of information. But going back to cultural diversity as a whole, I feel like it's important for us to understand the different, topics of cultural diversity, and this was an important episode today, is this talking about cultural diversity and how to understand it better, and just to be more educated as a whole on the topic. Another thing I want to bring up is something that that's called unconscious bias. And unconscious bias is a very big issue because as implied in the name, unconscious bias is a lot of times unknown. It's not known to be happening. People who happen to be doing it don't always know they're doing it. It's unconscious. It's more of like a not habit, but just like maybe some people were raised not in a less diverse area where there weren't as many cultures commingling, and maybe things they say that they think are okay can be coming off as more of appropriation and not appreciation. So just understanding that, understanding that how to help people, how to educate them in a way that's more helpful instead of harmful, instead of degrading. We don't want to do anything in the name of degradation. We always want to do things in the name of education. So, just respectfully educating people and, lead them on to the path of appreciation, not appropriation. Um, so there are a couple subcategories when it comes to, diversity and unconscious bias. Let's stay on the unconscious bias right now. So one is intentional inclusion. Now, intentional inclusion involves purposeful action, place plans that are focused on inciting positive changes, diversity, and inclusion in the workplace. Now, this is a type of positive, diverse. I mean, cultural bias because it all depends on how, in which way it's done. If you're setting up classes for people to understand and educate more and learn more about our culture, then that's great. But if these classes are setting up to maybe make fun of or mock or ridicule or compare certain cultures, then that's where the danger in it comes. That's where the badness in it comes. That's where the appropriation, not appreciation, comes on. Um, Another topic that I want to look at that is more of a negative one that happens unconsciously is microaggressions at school and work. Now, microaggressions are like maybe slight comments or slight actions that are done, and they may not be noticed unless directly looked for. A lot of people, including myself, sometimes maybe commit microaggressions without knowing that they're being committed. The concept of like this, I love to define words just to teach myself and teach everybody else is the concept of microaggression describes everyday nonverbal, verbal, or environmental insults or slights, whether intentional or non-intentional, that come across as derogatory, negative, or hostile messages to unrepresented members of your workforce or school. This can lead to extremely low morale and low production if not handled. So unfortunately in society, there's a lot of insensitivity that goes around with the things we choose to say to each other. And sometimes it's microaggressions, sometimes it's bullying, but a lot of times microaggressions come from, lack of exposure to different cultures, lack of exposure to different people. An example of a microaggression can be if, you're sitting with your friends and maybe a new student comes in and he may be from, say he's from Asia, and, you see he has a packed lunch, and he's like, your friend goes up and like, oh, bet you got rice in there or something, and that is a more direct. That's a more direct microaggression. Might not even come off as a microaggression, pure aggression in that one, but just slight comments or even direct comments that are aggressive or derogatory of one's culture is what we describe as microaggressions. And I feel like as a culture, just educating each other and understanding how to eliminate these microaggressions, and how maybe even if we have questions or want to be educated, how to appropriately come across this, more knowledge inquisitive and not as, as mocking as sometimes as it may seem. And I feel like being able to do this effectively as a whole, as a culture, is important in order to, growing and educating ourselves more. And this is something that we can all work on. Um, yeah, this is something we can all work on. Um, I feel like another thing when it comes to cultural diversity and understanding different cultures is acceptance and respect. I feel like a lot of times with our culture, with every person that belongs to a culture kind of sticks to their culture, and everything with their culture is seen as, the natural way to them. This is seen as like, I was raised with this, I was born out of this. This is the way things should go to me. And some people, when exposed to different cultures and different ways of doing things, are more accepting to understanding that, more accepting to learning. And some people, are less accepting, and they feel like, oh, if you don't go under these practices, it's wrong. They might shun people or make people of other cultures feel unwelcome. That's never what we want. That's never what we want to do. That's never the type of people we want to be. And as a culture, that's one thing we can work on. Is being more inclusive to those around us. Being more open to understanding, being more understanding to learning. And that's my pure purpose for, starting this podcast, is building more acceptance and respect for different cultures, different understanding to, help, break down the cultural gap that exists, Um, Even more, go into that another category of a diversity issue that I see around is, just acceptance and accommodation of beliefs, Um, and this again, I feel like comes from lack of exposure to different cultures, being around one culture, being around one group of people, you may be more closed minded, and it isn't at fault to you because there was a lack of exposure for you, but us being educated on it and exposed to it can help with our accommodation of beliefs, because an accommodation of belief isn't a contract saying you have to go upon those beliefs or you have to adopt those beliefs yourself, but just tying back to the respect, respecting those beliefs, not trying to change someone's beliefs to your own culture, not comparing beliefs, not making someone feel like their beliefs are wrong. We never want to do that. We never want to make people feel like their beliefs are wrong, because we all believe different things, and it's our God-given right to believe different things. Um, I feel like another one is generational gaps. Now, this is an issue I see day after day, time after time, and community after community. I see it all the time. Is generational gaps, and this type of diversity issue can be seen when you see people be like, oh, back in my day, we didn't have this, or we didn't do this, or these days y'all do this, and a lot of times from older people, and for people, I understand both sides of the aspect, because I'm a young person myself, um, but my a lot of people tell me I have an old soul, an old way of thinking, and I feel like it allows me to an extent, a little bit of understanding of both perspectives. From younger side, things have changed since maybe the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. There are more open resources to us. Things aren't as hard as us, or as hard for us to gain certain things. You don't really have to work as hard for certain things. There are just more overall opportunities and resources available for us, and that disconnect comes from back then there some certain resources, especially for certain races of people, weren't as available and weren't as easy to get as they are today. And so I mean, as a result, some people work less hard because it simply just isn't as hard to gather certain things. And from one side of the fence, that may seem to certain people like there's just a lack of work ethic, and that isn't the case most of the time. Most of the time, there's just that that availability of resources, the increase in the availability of resources and the availability of help. I feel like another generational gap issue I see is on the younger side, younger side issues. I feel like younger people feel as if, with older people, oh, they're old, I'm young, times are changing, they have no knowledge that could be of use to me. And, me personally, I feel like that's one thing I'm grateful to. I've been educated on and exposed to, and that I understand is that, older people who have been here for longer than me, whether it was for, 5 years, 10 years, 15, 20, 30, 40 years, it doesn't matter, 50, 60, it truly doesn't matter. I'm truly open to, any advice from any positive person I can get, no matter the age, especially if you're older than me, for the fact of, all of the obstacles and challenges I'm about to endure as a black man in America. There are multiple men and multiple African American people who have went through the same challenges, who have undergone the same issues that I have went through, and can help educate me or guide me through how to like pass through these issues. And I feel like me being taught to always hear people out no matter what, respect people's opinions, respect the older people of our generations, to care for them, sit down and listen to them. That's one thing that has provided me with so much information and so many connections that I truly value, is just understanding that people who were here before me have knowledge that I may not even know it exists. They may have access to resources I don't even I can't even fathom. So just understanding how to you know truly listen and help close that generational gap through clear communication and understanding from both sides. It's something I feel like as a community, we can do. And I feel like it's going to be great if we learn how to do that. Yeah, and today that was all I have for today. Again, just to get on here and talk about cultural diversity, the different type of subtopics of cultural diversity. How maybe in different ways we can work on eliminating that or working on that. Yeah, so that is the episode for today. Again, I thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you for listening, for being a part of this. You know what I'm saying? Again, I know this is a newer podcast, and right now things may seem a little choppy, but as we get along, the organization will get better, the topic will be more prepared and ready. But again, I thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening. And thank you for joining the Once and For All family. Peace.